Hi, my name is Helen Garraway, and I am the USA Today bestselling author of the Sentinels series and the paranormal romance Soul Myths series. And I'm here today to talk about my epic fantasy Sentinel series, the first book of which, Sentinels Awaken. I'll do a live reading of the first chapter in a moment, but first, I just wanted to sort of introduce my series and myself a little bit. So I started writing in 2016. I'm a bit of a late bloomer from a writing perspective, but I've been an avid reader all my life, and I love all sorts of genres, but my main love is fantasy. And so I wrote what I love. I wrote a series that I wanted to read myself, which is epic fantasy. And I got fed up with reading it on my laptop. So I thought, why not publish it as a book? So then I went to investigate how to publish a book, and I chose to self-publish. And I have now self-published what will be my fifth book in the Sentinel series, which will launch on February 23rd of this year. So another month to go, and Sentinels Banished will be available. And I've just launched Soul Breather, which is the first book in the fantasy romance series, which launched today, the January 23rd, as an ebook, but is also available as paperback and hardback. And you can get the paperback of all my books from the Book Dragon independent bookstore in Stockton-on-Tees, and you can get it either in store or via their website, which is bookdragon.co.uk. So I started writing the Sentinel series in 2016. I published Sentinels Awaken, the first book, in 2020, and it is an epic fantasy adventure. It's an immersive world of magic and mystery, full of political intrigue and sorcery and magic and all sorts. And it follows the story of a man called Gerald Haven, who is a captain in the King's Rangers. But he's also been chosen by the goddess, the Lady Leandri, as her new captain. 3,000 years previously, she had been fighting against these people called the Ascendants, who were trying to destroy her world and her people. And as a way of defending her people, she banished magic from the world. So she banished the Ascendants and also herself. Unfortunately, her personal guard couldn't follow her, so she protected them in these tall sentinel trees that they've been sleeping in for the last 3,000 years. But now there's a new threat looming, and the Lady Leandri has chosen her new captain. And although he doesn't really understand what that means to be the captain, she needs him to wake the sentinels so that they can protect her world again. And Gerald does. He accidentally awakens the first sentinel, called Valerian. And I'm just going to read the first chapter of Sentinels Awaken, and that will give you an idea of the story. And then the adventure continues through the other books into up to Sentinels Banished, which is, as I say, launching next month. There's also a free novella you can download if you sign up to my website and sign up to my newsletter. My website is www.helengarraway.com, and you can sign up to my newsletter there and download Sentinel Stirring for free. You can also get a free short story, which is Sentinels Awaken from Valerian's point of view. Obviously, he's been woken 3,000 years in the future. He no longer recognizes the world or understands what happens, and he feels guilty that he failed the lady and that he wasn't able to protect her. So he's dealing with all those emotions while he's also being tasked to protect Gerald and help him save Ramagran once again. And you can get that free story as part of the free anthology you can download from Amazon, which is part of the Creatures of Magic and Myth, and it's completely free. So I hope you can go and download that story and enjoy the beginning of the adventure from Valerian's point of view. So the first chapter in Sentinels Awaken, which I'm going to read, is from Gerald's point of view. So this is you're seeing it from Gerald, who's just finding out all these things that he's not really aware of. But anyway, we'll dive in, see how you like it, and hopefully it will tempt you to start the series. So chapter 1, Ladies' Temple Gardens in Old Vespers. The sword missed his nose by an inch, if that. A momentary relief as solid steel thunked into the ground, and Gerald jerked back like a snake about to strike, and then slithered away, inhaling the scent of soggy grass, dirt, and roses. Roses? His brow wrinkled in confusion as he scuttled away and regained his feet. Backing towards the tall sentinel tree arching over the lady's temple, he strained to see his assailants. He leaned against the trunk as he scanned the gardens. He would have to apologize later. Staying alive was more important than the sanctity of the temple gardens. There were 3 guards, large and brutal, Chancellor's men eager to deliver him up more dead than alive. The complaint of him snooping around the Chancellor's business would be enough to get him placed on report, if not demoted. He wasn't supposed to be near Chancellor Isseran, let alone following him. Gritting his teeth, Gerald considered his options. He couldn't kill them, not on the lady's soil, yet he couldn't let them report back either. The satin-smooth bark of the tree beneath his fingers warmed for a moment as he hesitated. The image of a tall, black-haired man stood before him. This apparition wore a silvery green, high-necked uniform that glimmered in the swirling mist. He was striking to look at, unnaturally pale, with distinctive features and straight black eyebrows over silver eyes that gleamed in the dim light. Gerald gaped at him, unable to stop staring. It wasn't possible. Lady help him. It wasn't possible, was it? He recoiled as the man spoke. Captain, is it time? The man asked, his silver eyes burning bright. He was young, younger than he was, Gerald thought, yet his expression was grave. There was a sense of a burden understood and accepted, of experience over youth. He had a sword strapped to his hip and a bow across his back, and he looked like he knew how to use them. Gerald frowned. Time? He asked, and the image faded. He took a deep, steadying breath and turned into one of the guards rushing him. Blocking the blow, he spun towards his attacker instead of away. Deep grunts and a thwack of punches broke the silence of the garden. Gerald twisted out of the man's grip and drew his knife. He hesitated, remembering he was on the lady's ground, and instead landed a punch that dropped the man as he retreated. More men arrived, crowding the gate. Gerald flinched as something buzzed by him, and one of the men grunted in pain and fell back. Audible thuds followed, and the men jinked back from the gate. Gerald took the opportunity to fade into the night, circling the temple and up towards the justice buildings. The tower chimed another hour. The sky was beginning to lighten to a steel grey. If he didn't return to the barracks soon, it would be evident to everyone that he'd been out that night. Keeping to the shadows, he made for the rear wall of the garrison. The small pack still nestled at the foot of the oak tree where he'd hidden it. Assessing the height, he pulled the grappling hook out and slung it over the wall. The soft clank was loud in the quiet night air. He pulled it tight and was over before anyone noticed him. Gathering up his rope, he dropped to the ground behind the stables. Gerald reached his room undetected. As a captain of the King's Rangers, he rated his own place. Sometimes he missed the camaraderie of the shared sleeping quarters, but not on nights like this, when he was returning from an unsanctioned venture, battered and bruised. He dropped his bag in the corner and lit the lantern with the candle he had picked up from the hallway. Fishing the notebook out of his pocket, he shed his clothes, lay down on the bed with an exhausted sigh, and began flipping through the pages. His fingers slowed as he realized it was the Chancellor's handwriting. He recognized the looping tales Isseran used. A list of names and words. Nothing else, nothing to explain what they meant. Most of the names in the book were known to him, a scattering of administrators, lords, and courtiers, as well as high-ranking officers from both the Rangers and the King's Justice. He snapped the notebook shut and lay frowning in thought as the sky lightened. Had he seen a man in the sentinel tree? Legend said Lady Leandri's sentinels, her personal guards, had all vanished with her when she sundered the bloodstone and brought down the veil nearly 3,000 years ago. The trees appeared at the same time. It was said in memory of them, and that's where the name came from. Some said the guards slept inside them, unable to cross the veil with the lady. No, it couldn't be true. It was all myth and legends. Shrugging off the possibility, his thoughts returned to his unsanctioned foray into the warehouse district of old Vespers, which raised more questions than answers. If Isseran was involved in smuggling goods across Vesperi, then they were in more trouble than he realized. According to the notebook he had found, the Chancellor was colluding with a network of influential individuals. Rising before 6 chime, he showered and dressed in the grey and black of a King's Ranger. The only visible sign of his overnight excursion were his reddened knuckles and a slight bruise discolouring his right cheek. At least they could be explained easily enough. Everyone gained bruises in the sparring ring. Commander Nichols was in his office when Gerald arrived. Nichols was a career soldier. He'd risen through the ranks uninterrupted and had been tenured as the commander of the King's Rangers and Gerald's commanding officer. He was a large man, towering over Gerald's slight stature and twice as wide. He was also intelligent. Gerald respected the sharp mind that sat behind the piercing brown eyes that saw through every ragtag desperate excuse. He could cut through bull faster than any commander Gerald knew. Nichols was a staunch supporter of the lady, and Gerald trusted him. Nichols' brow darkened as Gerald reported. He glared at Gerald as he took the notebook he offered him. Gerald knew the names, having memorized them during his sleepless hours. He stiffened under Nichols' inspection and knew his nondescript appearance, slight build and brown hair belied his competency. After all, he had been on Isseran's detail because he was tenacious and discreet. The tenacious piece was the part that got him in trouble, and that usually meant trouble for Nichols. Nichols flipped through the notebook. This doesn't tell us much. It certainly wasn't worth drawing Isseran's attention to you any more than it already is. You're not supposed to be anywhere near him. I didn't expect him to be there, sir. I left him in the arms of his latest floozy. He should have been there for the night. Nichols glanced up from the notebook and Gerald winced. If the Chancellor is at the root of our troubles, then we will have no choice but to go to the king, Gerald said, watching his commander. If these people are his supporters, then most of the administration is corrupted. If you can get through the Crown Prince first. He guards his father's peace with a tenacity equal to yours. Depends if the king wants it guarded so, Gerald said, considering the astute monarch that ruled the kingdom. He didn't think the king would accept his son's scheming for long. Unless he says otherwise, that is what we have to accept. Nichols glared at Gerald in warning. Do not offend the prince, Haven. Your life will become much more difficult if you do. You think Isseran is a pain? Corel would be 10 times worse. But it's not like the king to allow others to speak for him, Gerald argued. Nichols shrugged. This time the prince was involved, and I expect Benedict is preparing him for the throne. Still, it doesn't seem right to me. Good job it's not down to you, isn't it? Leave this with me. I'll see if I can get an audience with the prince. Keep your head down. You're supposed to be off Isseran's rotation, so stay away from him. Let's not rile him any more than necessary. Keep to the barracks. Nichols stood and leant on his desk. Understood? Yes, sir. Gerald saluted and left the office. He didn't think arguing would get him anywhere. He knew Isseran was up to no good. Look at his attempts to lose Gerald. If he didn't have anything to hide, he wouldn't try so hard. His turning up at the warehouse, which was totally unexpected, sealed it for Gerald. He wondered why Nichols wasn't so sure. The days passed, and Gerald kept to the barracks, leaving once to visit the Ladies' Temple to apologize for fighting in her gardens. When he arrived, a young man was kneeling before the altar, and Gerald halted in surprise. The white marble was shimmering. It solidified as he watched, and soft voices drifted on the air. Dearest Berlarian, please, be a diversion, protect him. But my lady, the man broke off as he looked around, aware of someone behind him. He rose in one fluid motion, bowed towards the altar. He turned away, keeping his eyes downcast as he left the temple. But Gerald recognized him, even without his bow strapped to his back. The glimpse of silver eyes and the archaic uniform, those were distinctive. Hey, wait! Gerald ran after him, but he had disappeared. The gardens were empty. Returning to the temple, Gerald knelt before the lady's altar. He stared at the lifelike statue of a young woman standing barefoot by a stream, surrounded by flowers. The Lady Leandri, the deity who helped create the world of Ramagran. The white marble gleamed in the soft light of the temple. The statues shimmered, and the flowers rustled, giving off a heady scent. You are late, my captain. Gerald stiffened, glancing around the empty temple, and his stomach fluttered as he stared at the statue. Late? Events quicken, and we are unprepared. He swayed, grappling with her words. Unprepared for what? The forgotten stir. It is time. Gerald braced a hand on the stone step. What was going on? Was he hallucinating? He flicked another glance around him and back to the statue. The forgotten? They wait patiently, my captain. Who does? A tinkling laugh filled the air. Who do you think? The shimmering statue solidified, and the laugh faded. The statue gleamed in the subdued light, watching him. Gerald rose, staring about him wildly, his heart thrumming in his chest. He backed away from the altar and hurried out of the temple. He stopped before the tall sentinel. It couldn't be. The myths could not be real. The silvery trunk glistened in the sunlight, and he placed a tentative hand against it. Nothing happened. He shook his head. He was an idiot. What had he expected to happen? Did he really think a man would step out of the tree? The sentinel stood as it had for the last century and more. Records stated that the temple had been buried beneath the land for nearly 3,000 years, and all that time the sentinel had been sheltering it. As the soil was excavated and the temple revealed, the sentinel had slowly straightened its pointed leaves, reaching for the sky. One of many sentinels scattered across Remagran, though the only one in Old Vespers. Deep in thought, Gerald paused at the entrance of the chapter house. After a fleeting glance back at the temple, he entered and approached the duty scholar. History of the Sentinels, first floor, section 12. You won't find much, though. No one's been able to explain them, the duty scholar said, pointing the way. Gerald leaned back in his chair and scrunched his face up. His eyes were sore from trying to decipher the faded text in the oldest document he could find. According to the dusty journal, the Lady Leandri had called forth her sentinels in 1122, and nearly 100 men and women had responded, committing their lives to her. Then she had dispersed them throughout Remagran. She had kept an arm at the palace. An arm? He frowned at the unfamiliar term and returned to the parchment, searching for references to an arm. He stilled as he read the list of 12 strange names that comprised the arm, the sentinels posted to the lady's palace. His breath hissed out as he found what he was searching for, the name he had heard for the first time only a few hours earlier. Valerian, he whispered. As Gerald returned to the barracks, his mind was spinning. Questions spangled off one another, and there were no ready answers. He wasn't sure if the lady had spoken to him, or if he'd imagined her and the man. Could a man exist within a tree for 3,000 years? And if he could, why had he awoken now? And a more disturbing thought, were there others? So that's the first chapter of Sentinels Awaken. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I hope that you will join me on the adventure and pick up a book. So, as I said, all of my Sentinel books and the Soul Breather, the first book in the Soul Myth series, is available at the Book Dragon, an independent bookstore in Stockton-on-Tees. You can also purchase them via their website, which is bookdragon.co or thebookdragon.co.uk. And my latest book, Sentinels Banished, will be stocked once it releases next month. As I said, you can find me on my author website, which is www.helengarraway.com, or on my social media. You'll probably find me on Instagram, where I'm most active, and that's Helen Garraway Author. Or you can find me on other social, and my social links are in my Linktree, which is linktree.com/Helen Garraway. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy my books, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks a lot. Bye.